that what separates a successful entrepreneur from someone that doesn't. But entrepreneurs tend to be those fools that persist where others that sort of continue where others stopped, basically, because we're probably not the first ones that ever thought about this, but we're the first ones that pursued it to such extent that we were proper fools along the way, and we could have failed, and that's also what I accepted. We could have failed, but I would have never missed it, never wanted to miss it for anything in the world.
Yeah, it was the first sales talk. No?
Yeah, it's like I would like to know, like, what are the things of the message that do you believe that they connected more in order to say, yeah, let's do it. I will buy your service, or I will let you here.
Yeah, well, one of the first things I noticed is when I started talking about sustainability, they were inquiring about economics. And that's when I reshuffled my pitch and I started about economics, and that's when they started inquiring for sustainability.
Yeah. I was wondering, Olaf, what was one of the most difficult, let's say, elements that you had to integrate into your technology over the years?
Well, I would say
Olaf, thanks a lot for accepting the invitation to come here to Tomorrow's Bites. I think we feel really lucky because we like what you and your team are doing with Orbisk. We think that you have a really nice mission. But we always do a similar question to all the guests to start, just for the audience that maybe not be familiar with you or with Orbisk, but mainly with you. How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I would describe myself as someone with limited patience and a short attention span, actually. And that generally makes for a good entrepreneur in a way, as long as you have the team to support you in doing all of the stuff that you're not very capable in doing. I love to involve myself in a whole share of different things, and I love to learn all the time, but and that sort of makes me strong at what I do. And I figured, let's put that strength to something that really matters in this world. But that's what we're talking about today, aren't we?
Yeah, it's as well. I want to dive into a bit of your background, because I did some research, and you are also a survival and outdoor enthusiast. That maybe gives you already the traits that you're explaining, right? Like you... And I think there may be traits that are very good in business as well, that you know how to survive in hard times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose we can get to the survival and outdoor stuff, because that's indeed one of my deep passions. But COVID for us, like we're a company working in the restaurant space, was also a very tough time. And before that, actually, we only really just started. And I always wondered if everything was going well in the start of our entrepreneurial journey. Everything just seemed to work out. And then I always wondered, will I be a good entrepreneur when shit hits the fan, right? When things are not coming our way, how will I be able to maintain myself? So that made me insecure. But you're indeed right. That sort of trial of your will, the trial of your belief in what you do, does make you a stronger entrepreneur in the end, and it does separate those who are willing to persist from those who cannot. And we pulled through. So I think that's what I'm very proud of for myself, but also especially for the team.
I was curious, when looking to your resume and your background and doing a little bit research, when does the interest for food actually start? It was something that it was already there always, or something that a little bit appeared in the way?
Well, my love for hospitality and food within that space has been there for long. In my student days, I used to work in restaurants and stuff. So I love the concept of hospitality. What I like, I worked at a variety of different jobs, but what's so beautiful about the hospitality space is that it's a very sort of clear and honest transaction. People, they can come to bring you money, and in return, they expect a friendly face and good food. And if that transaction works out, everyone leaves that day, that evening, that transaction a happy person. And that's not true for all the other. I mean, I worked in casinos. Let's put it that way. Not everyone leaves that transaction happily, right? So hospitality is a win-win win-win industry, and food something really beautiful in there. Now, I can't admit that I always knew that when I worked in restaurants, that food waste was such a big issue, or that food in itself had such a big impact on the well-being of the planet. But that's what I always saw, and then finding out later in life, in my pursuit of doing something that matters, how influential food is on the well-being of our planet, and thus us, and how big food waste of an issue is still. That's when everything came together. And but at the point when I was starting that search, so what should I do with my time and energy? I was open to any sort of sustainability challenge. It could be energy, it could be transportation, or whatever it would be. I just started researching what's the biggest problems in this world. And when it was food, I was happy because, I love food and everyone loves food. So that's a good topic to talk about.
Then I am curious, when you think back on those days when you were working in hospitality, are there like moments that now you see with a different point of view, since now maybe you're more aware about the food waste, and like maybe moments of saying like, yeah, I do not know how we were able to do this or this, or how we would never put a solution to food waste in this like in this area.
Yeah, let's let's put it that way. Chefs become chefs because they love food more than you and I even do. That's truly true. That's the reason why they choose this job. Having said that, there's one thing that makes a hospitality heart tick more, which is your guests, which is the people that you're trying to serve and make happy and put smiles on their faces every day. And in this pursuit for the happiest possible guests, we've made some compromises in making sure that there's always enough, which results in always too much. That's what we're solving. And that sort of pursuit is always higher, and that's also something we really embrace. The fight for the smile of your guest is the biggest fight that you have as a chef, and that's what will always make sure you can still serve. But therefore, myself and everyone that I work with and everyone that I come across become a little bit desensitized for that food waste, quite honestly. So it's not like we don't. If you really open your eyes to it, you really you are somewhat appalled. Every restaurant employee will say so, but you do get desensitized in the everyday operations to the topic. So yeah, it is important. And reflecting back on those days, now I see how horrendous it actually was in the restaurants that I worked with, because they were average restaurants. They weren't wasting especially much or whatever, but considering that basically every restaurant wastes way too much, that's appalling now. But back then I didn't see it. No one really sees, unfortunately, or hardly anyone sees, and that is the unfortunate truth. But there's a lot of people waking up to this topic now, luckily.
Yeah, it pops up a question to me that you said, like, it wasn't clear, right? You knew it was there, but you really didn't saw it. It didn't bother, etc., etc. So how were then your first interactions with these people when you offered your solution at Orbisk?
Yeah, so it's quite different. Some of the bigger units that are more data driven had already woken up to the topic because they see the economic loss of food waste. That's of course that's there, and not everyone knows the environmental loss of it. Some people don't think like it's the same for consumers. I always say about 90% of people think they waste less than average. Everyone, but that doesn't work out, right? That's not statistics. It's not like 90% can waste less than average, but everyone feels like everyone else is not doing so well, but they know the statistics. There's a lot of food being wasted, but not in my kitchen. We're very aware, right? And the same applies to restaurants. And that's for two reasons. They do want to believe that's true, and they're indeed a little bit desensitized to it. And food waste comes in a whole lot of very minor instances, let's say. But generally they do underestimate it, and it's a very sensitive, vulnerable topic too. Food waste is very. If you talk to your neighbors about food waste, that's what I started doing. I started literally talking to my neighbors about food waste, and also I went to like startup hubs and places, and I started inquiring people for their food waste, and it made me realize that food waste is a very fragile topic. You don't like to talk about the fact that you're also someone that wastes food, right? So it is, and that the same applies in businesses. So and that's what I'm saying. Coming back to your question, so how did they respond? Sometimes they did see, and they felt bad for it, and they already tried a bunch of stuff, but they realized that they didn't have enough data to really act. And others sort of were a little bit blind to the topic still, not deliberately, but they thought they were doing a lot better than they actually were.
Yeah. And then how did you came to the solution of Orbisk? Like, how did that transition happen, or Olaf?
Yeah, so let me just indeed tell you about what it is that we do. So we just track food waste in the back of restaurants by outfitting the waste bin with a weighing scale and a camera unit. That easy.
Yeah.
And we have AI identifying the food that goes to waste, and we turn that into data. We can go deeper into the solution. So that's what we did. But the reason why we started there is because the waste bin is the perfect translator for all of the inefficiencies of your restaurant, because anything in the process that doesn't work out ends up in that waste bin. So from that waste bin, you can basically retrace everything that's going on and going wrong in your process. So that's where when we figured, if only we would know a little bit better what the content of that waste bin would be, without having someone to stand there, which I did in the start actually, without someone having to stand there all day, every day, just writing down what's going to waste, such that you have the insights upon which you can act. Because you can start weighing the bin bag at the end of the day, and it'll tell you amount of kilos, and you'll feel ashamed, but you still won't know what to do next day. And that's where we started. So, but we did start standing next to waste bins for about a week in a restaurant, just seeing if the business case and the problem was indeed as dissectable as we thought it was. Morning till late evening, we were just standing there, like writing down those waste instances and seeing our processes, of course, not only looking at waste bin, but also sort of retracing all of that. And we saw that this is something that could be solved.
I love really the story of how you started validating the idea. I'm just wondering, how did you approach to restaurants? And I mean, you just went to restaurants and told them, "Can I just stand next to your waste bin for the coming week, noting down everything you waste?" And people will be like, "Yeah."
Yeah, well, happy to go into sort of your friends make your first. You build your business on friendships. That's what it started first. Yeah. So I was still friends, far removed friends, but with my former bosses at the restaurants that I used to work. So I just called one of them. I told them, I've got this idea. Can I check it out in your restaurant? And he told me, well, I'm convinced. I think this is an important topic. I've got 2 young kids, so I think it's important, and and whatever. But you can only do so if you can convince my team. But luckily we have a team event, like a party. In 2 weeks, so you can get on stage. You have got 5 minutes to convince the room that that this is something we should have in a restaurant. And if at least half of them is convinced, then you can come in and you can sort of do whatever you want for a couple months, and we'll check it out. So that's what we did.
How was the pitch?
Yeah, the pitch was at that point we didn't really envision the full AI scope just yet. We said we had something out with like a tablet, and you needed to push a couple buttons. And you really saw that half the crowd indeed was excited, mostly the younger people, and the older people were a little bit more hesitant. And the pitch was about the impact of food. So we sketched what a month of food wasted in their restaurants, how many times that could fly you to New York, how many bathtubs you could fill with water, and how many sort of blocks of cheese that would be. And yeah, that
was really important for the people. It's like, how many blocks of cheese is that?
Yeah. It worked. Yeah. If they realize it's a bathtub full of cheese, then yeah, there you go.
Then the first idea was not what the technology that has ended up being, no? So
Yeah.
what was exactly at first it was just like a tablet where people would say we put the data of what they were throwing, or how it would work?
Yeah, more or less. So I've got like I used to work like professionally. I used to work in retail and e-commerce, and sort of the theory in e-commerce, you need to get to result in the least amount of clicks. Basically, that's one of the wisdoms, or I'm not even sure if that's one of the wisdoms today in e-commerce, but they used to be like that. So we just figured out this system where you could get the highest granularity of data with the least amount of clicks on that screen while still being intuitive. So that's the first thing that we thought of, because we already knew that it can't take too much time. So we basically figured out a system that you could just press, this is fries, half a burger, and whatever, and you'd be gone within 5 seconds. Until we realized, well, that 5 seconds is still too much. It's just still too much. They won't do it. They won't like it. It'll be fidgety for maximum a week, and then we'll start having gaps in our data. So we should be faster. And this is the exact same time when really AI was about to take flight. We're talking 2018 now. So AI wasn't as going as hard as it is now, but it was seriously already on the rise within the tech community, and the power of computer vision. And that's when we figured, okay, the only way this can really work is if it's absolutely seamless. And that's what we. And I think we can still be proud. I think we've heavily invested, me and my co-founder, but now also the whole team. But Bart and me at the start, it was just me and him. We just bashed each other's heads in over usability time and time again. Like we can never expect anything from our clients because they're busy doing other stuff. So it should be easy. And if you think it's easy, then it should still be twice as easy until it's absolutely seamless. And I think that's where we succeed now in what we do.
Oh, that's interesting what you say. How did you integrate the AI element into your solution, Olaf?
Yeah, so we never built a tablet solution. We right away started with the AI solution. That was when we set foot in a restaurant and we started noting down that data ourselves. We realized that a tablet solution would never work. And at the same time, somewhere in a bar, everything also starts in a bar. Literally, our first business idea started on the back of a beer coaster, like in the.
We have heard this one often.
Yes.
Again, it's true. It's I invited Bart to a bar and we started sketching out these ideas on little papers there. And also the AI idea came in the bar. We were just talking, and then we figured, yeah, we can use the camera angle. So we started smashing together some IoT components, put a camera to a little screen, and started outfitting that same restaurant with the camera unit, and started looking how that could work. And made all the mistakes that we could make and probably a bunch more, but we did succeed in finding the right way.
Yeah, so the AI is mainly used for like going over all the pictures that are now taken.
Yeah, so that's the most important core AI element to what we do. We have the AI image recognition algorithms identify the type of food going to waste. We also have them, identify or estimate the weight. We have them sort of assume what part of the process the food came from, but we also have AI now that like other algorithms that sort of gather and aggregate the data to tangible insights. And we're smashing that data together with some procurement and sales data and guest numbers and all of that in pursuit of actual forecasting algorithms.
Does the AI also uses data, like real life data, on the prices of cocoa or chocolate in that sense, and coffee?
No, and the reason why is because all of the restaurants generally tend to have their own deals with the wholesalers and all of that. So we do check in with wholesalers every once in a while to get some average prices on food categories. And that's the way. And that we give an estimate of how much you saved based on assumed pricing, which is, roughly right, but it will never be 100% accurate. But that's enough. And the most important thing that we're trying to have them do is save kilos. Right? Kilos, and then preferably beef kilos over cucumber kilos, but still any kilo saved is euros saved in the end.
I've seen how the technology more or less works. Like there are like this really nice video of people in the restaurant when they come with what they are intend to throw into the in the trash can. They show it to the camera recognizes, and then they throw it. So then, how does I mean, you explained already how the technology of recognition works, but then what happens once that is recognized? Where does that information go, and how does go back translated to the customer, to the restaurant?
Yeah, so we have indeed, so we have camera, weighing scale, the food goes into the waste bin, and instantly that picture is taken without sort of any touch involved. Then that picture, including all of the metadata like the weight and the time and all of that, is sent to the cloud. And that's where all the magic happens. That's where our AI algorithms run, and we do the live recognition. From that point on, basically, when we've done the full cycle of recognizing what food, how much food, when it was disposed, and why it was disposed, to the best of our ability, we send that data to their dashboard. So basically, they can have, it's an in-browser dashboard which they can access, where you have interactive data that you can splice and dice however you want, where you can see we always waste tomatoes on Tuesday morning, or our dessert buffet on Wednesday night's not working very well, or every morning it's too much, scrambled eggs, whatever it may be. And based on that data, we give them the trends and the actual data. We also give them interpretations of that data. So we do trend analysis, where you really see, so this is the stuff where you do well, this is the stuff where you should be better, or that sort of where you see you're starting to waste more than you were. And then on top of that, that dashboard, and you can see all of the pictures with, the AIs. Also, the chefs love to see pictures, because that sort of gives a face to the data. They can really see how much was wasted, and what that looks like. What does 10 kilo of bananas look like, and how is it distributed? In what context are they wasted? But on top of that, we have our food waste coaches. We have a whole team of food waste coaches that also coach these entrepreneurs on how to interpret this data in their organizations. Of course, we only see the waste bin. The chef knows his or her whole operation, and we tell them, the type of questions they should be asking themselves based on this data, because we still won't be able to see their operations. But what kind of ideas does this data give you? That's what we help them see.
Oh, that's very nice.
I have a question. What about the useless waste? Let's put it I guess that there's an interpretation on what I wanted to say, but I mean, like, you have like things that are not intended to become waste, probably because you cook too much. And then you have things that normally become waste, and they are known to be waste, as it could be onion peels or eggshells or banana peels, etc., etc. Do these things also count as part of the food waste, or is this taken aside?
Yeah, that's funny that you ask. So we've always reported on the edible food waste. So indeed, the parts but we do track it all. We explicitly track it all, just so we can show them. This is what we're looking at is not your onion peels; it's actually your onions, because we also tracked your onion peels.
Yeah.
What you're looking at is actual onion waste. Having said so that's what you'll be able to see in our dashboard, the edible food waste and what you can learn from that. But we also have insights on your peels and on the trimmings and the intended waste, so to say. The reason why it's funny that you ask is because the European Union has given off, and I think it's even United Nations, they've given off that because trimmings is such a multi-interpretable sort of category, you would slice off a different amount from a carrot than I would, and a chef would, right? In the heat of the moment. So, peels is very multi-interpretable. So now there's legislation coming up of people having to report on their food waste levels, and that should be including food trimmings. Otherwise, to make the whole story complete, such that they really do need to force themselves to be most efficient, even about their trimmings. I would say that's generally not the biggest opportunity they have, but it is a definite opportunity. There's way more you can make out of stuff that a lot of us do consider to be trimmings, but we should be more careful about because it's still actually very edible food.
Yeah, that's true. And also for what you were saying of the of course, in the perspective of the chef, of the very different chefs, like the amount of useful food can be completely different. And maybe some chefs, they need the whole, for example, the yolk and the egg white, and others only use the egg yolk for something, and they take out the egg white because it's not useful, and that will be considered also.
They only make tiramisu.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell them actually, yeah, you are wasting your egg white. It's like, yeah, but I already know because I am not using my egg white. No, like for them, it's part also of the trimmings. Yeah, that is a really interesting insight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was wondering, Olaf, what was one of the most difficult, let's say, elements that you had to integrate into your technology over the years?
Well, I would say there's two, like if we're really talking technology, I think the hardest thing is not technology, but let's consider technology for now.
Okay.
There's two things that come to mind. The topic we just talked about, what's a salad, what is trimmings, and what is a vegetable mix, is sometimes already like it's a very, very blurry segmentation. So, finding the right angle that would work not only for one client, but for all of our clients, finding the sort of that exact perfect mix has always been a challenge. But, we've made our decisions there. So that's a difficult one because it's a semi-technical problem. In the end, it's not a technical problem. The other one is, a lot of fellow founders will tell you the same. Hardware is a bitch, man. Hardware is super hard. For a variety of reasons. One of them being, things in real life break. That's just the unfortunate truth. And they break especially in like highly intense environments like a professional kitchen where there's like steam and there's heat and there's stuff bumping into that thing and whatever. So that's pretty hard. But and then on top of that, it's super hard because once you've shipped it out somewhere, it's there. So you can't touch it anymore. So we update all of our devices. Our software we can update remotely, but anything that breaks or you'd rather have in a different way, in software, you can just replace a component, making it a little bit, blunting it down a little bit, but you can just replace a component. You can't do that in a hardware device that's no longer within your own domain. So you have to deal. If, say, your camera has now become redundant for whatever reason, you can't just sort of remotely replace that camera. So that's what makes hardware, having loads of hardware at your client sites, a very, very difficult topic. And I'm very happy that we succeeded and our hardware is very stable. But man, it's been a journey, I can tell you.
What kind of metrics or data have you seen to have a bigger impact in the practices of your customers in like the restaurants?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, of course, indeed, there's a lot of anecdotal examples of where we've reduced waste, and there's beautiful, funny stories here and there. But the most initial useful baseline data is the stuff that I just told you. We always waste 10 kilos of tomatoes on Tuesday mornings. We always waste a lot of desserts on Wednesdays and salads on Fridays. That's what we use most and what we get most impact for. But when it comes to a particular metric or set of metrics, we try and combine that data as best we can with their guest numbers, because that puts perspective. If you waste 10 kilos today, but you only had 100 guests, and tomorrow you waste also 10 kilos, but you had 250 guests, that's a different perspective. And by getting this waste per guest perspective, that allows us to really see the difference between segments, that allows us to see the difference between weekdays, that allows us to see the difference between hotels within the same chain, or with seasonality and all of that. So I think that in the industry is the most important metric that we're all in pursuit of.
What about is there a difference in the waste when it's something that got spoiled or something that was intended to be used and it was not used or thrown because of customers, etc.?
Yeah, so those two things are actually the same. Something that wasn't used spoils. So spoilage is the main reason for food going to waste. I think what you're referring to is sort of miscooked or sort of.
Yeah, well, what I mean is that there must be a part of the information you can use to know how much you need to cook in that day.
Mhm.
But there's also another part that is planning how much you're gonna buy. No,
Yeah.
and those are two things that maybe can seem like quite connected between each other, but they definitely take different actions. No,
Mhm.
and that's why I was wondering if there is difference between the data of the things that got spoiled because the data of consumption got. I mean, I don't know if that's actually normal in restaurants, to be honest. That's that things get like in a data after the date of consumption.
Mhm.
But I don't know if there's a difference between that and the things that were miscooked, as you said, or were not nice, or
Yeah.
the at the end of the day you have to throw them because the customers did not eat everything or whatever.
Yeah. let me throw a bunch of data your way. So 70% of the food generally that we see, 70% of the food waste that we see has never been on a plate. So
Okay.
we're not talking, we are talking about portion sizes, but that's only 30% of the problem. 70% of the food has never gotten to your guests of the food waste. Let's be clear
Wow.
there.
In restaurants as well. Wow.
Yeah. So on average, about, depending on the industry, somewhere between 5 and 25% of all the food procured is wasted, and within that 25%, 70% has never been with your guests. That's the split there. Let's also be super clear: no food in restaurants ever actually spoils, because the hygiene code in the industry is so strict that everything we see under our cameras is food that you and me would perfectly well eat. Like, it's bizarre what kind of stuff you see go to waste, because the hygiene code is so super strict that nothing can even spoil within that window. So actual spoilage is not a thing in restaurants. Miscooking also hardly isn't. So it's all about, indeed, making sure that you don't buy too much in the end, or you don't serve too much, because you can still serve too much, but on your buffet. So helping them to see how much is exactly right is what we do in the everyday. And that's why you can see, indeed, every Tuesday morning you waste 10 kilos of tomatoes. So let's buy 8 less. We still have 2 to spare, and we were still sure that we have enough for our guests, but we don't have 10, we have 2. And that's basically our gig. So we help them, not initially, I mean, I hope one day, it's our absolute mission to go towards zero food waste someday, and then we probably need, indeed, these forecasting insights. But until that time, having them reduce their waste levels from 25% to 5% is already insane when it comes to the amount of food waste saved. So that's our first pursuit.
Huh. It's interesting. The one that views the pictures is every time hungry, I think. If I heard like that.
We have this, internally, we have this unacceptable channel in our Slack communications, and you see the most bizarre pictures, man. They really are really infuriating at times. One that I remember most is just and that was actually a very good day, because we looked at each other and we knew this is why we do this, but we had like this like full baking tray with like 15 lobsters in there.
Oh wow.
And we couldn't see on the photo if they were alive, but they certainly didn't look cooked. So this restaurant tossing out 15 lobsters in one go, and that sort of is really infuriating to see. And everyone was so disgruntled about this, but that was a day. So it's not a good day for those lobsters, nor is it for the world. But it was a very uniting day for us, because we knew this is why we do this shit.
Yeah, that's great. You really validated. Olaf, I want to eventually actually go to the first year of building your solution? Because you have the idea, you don't really have the money actually to execute that much, right? So how do you go on? How were those first months like developing? How did you tackle that? And how did you basically, yeah, like what kind of tools or anything that you got in that period that helped you along the way to build the business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this comes back to the outdoor and survival skills. We just crafted. No, that's not true. The Yeah, like in the this is where I mentioned you build the first part of your company is built on friendships, right? Me and my co-founder Bart, we just started jamming away at this, but there was no one that would actually give us funds yet. They say
Oh,
you should fund yourselves with friends, families, and fools. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that saying
yeah.
before. I would advise you to not do so, because I'm happy that I never had my family or my friends economically step in, because I want to, use my friendships for stuff that are just friendships and nothing more. I
Just
would
the fools. You have to go for the fools, no?
the fools. You need those. And you don't need to talk about the results of your company over Christmas dinner, right?
Yes.
And so we self-funded a lot, and it's not like we were rich. We both had a decent job before, but not super rich. So we invested most of our savings, and which meant that every single bit we got, we had to reuse. We bought indeed a bunch of cameras, a bunch of screens, and all that stuff. But every time we would think of something new, we had to take the old one apart, or from a client, like break it all apart, put it back together, and start over. Really, like that part is still very much bootstrapped. But more than anything, it's just putting in your own hours. In the end, that's the most valuable. So I spent like there was in the first 2 years, I probably worked 100-hour weeks, and Bart at least as much, because Bart's even more of a fool than I am. So we just spent crazy amount of hours, and I'm the storyteller guy, Bart's the techie guy. So he just Bart loves coding and his kids, but coding and his wife. But that's about it.
I love that you had to make the clarification of the coding, but also the kids and the wife.
Yeah. And he loves his wife and his kids and coding, and so that's all he did. Like every single hour, waking hour, we were just jamming away at this thing, and that turned into a product. And then friends, we do have a bunch of friends. For instance, the first prototype thingy, one of our friends owns a laser cutter device, and he knows how to do some 3D modeling. So we asked him to do so. We paid him to do so, but we paid him like a decent amount, but something less than he would otherwise probably charge a professional client. But we still wanted to pay him, because I don't want to be indebted to people. But we did know, and with this boss guy at the restaurant that I mentioned before, these people you trust, so you don't need to make difficult deals with them or contractualize all sorts of stuff. You can just sort of, they're as excited for what you do as you are, and then sort of they help, and they put in some of their, you pay them for their hours, but they do put in some of their love too, and that's you need those people around you. So there's a lot of my friends and Bart's friends that were part of that first phase, and a whole bunch of those are still part of our journey today, because that's the people that build your company.
They also got shares as well.
No,
If
not
they are
shares.
part.
That's why I always wanted to pay everyone,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
that makes a very, very, very messy cap table. So that's why I always said, even though sometimes they really didn't want it, I want to pay you for what you do, even though I'm paying you from my own savings account right now, because we don't want to get into tough situations that might lead to economical things that once more influence friendships. You don't want to be in that place.
When was the time that you got the first round of investment? In what year?
So we had we had a grant by the Dune Foundation
Yeah.
sometime in 2018. We had a loan by Rabobank, also 2019. 2018. That's the first time when we could actually start. No, that's not true. I'm misreading that time. No, both of those were 2019. So we had our first grant in 2019 and our first loan also in the summer of 2019. And that was also the first time we could start paying ourselves. The first 1.5 years, we didn't really pay ourselves. We still did it next to our side job. So we had other income. And in 2018, we got a small little government grant for some little project that we did that was slightly related, but at least it gave us some funding to buy some of the electronics that we needed.
Because I wonder, and I think that this is something that every entrepreneur goes through, and probably many people in the audience that they have their own startups. How did you deal with the dark times of we're not getting funded, we're doing this, putting many hours, we're not seeing a return of investment? What was your thoughts on those days? Or maybe you didn't
those
have
were the
any of
most
those
beautiful days, I have to say. I mean, we're now successful, and I'm super proud of what we do, and I couldn't love the team more than I do now. But those days, even though you were low on money, you didn't pay yourselves. We both tuned down our day jobs to about 50%. So we didn't nearly have the income we had before. We could just make rent, right? But you're also not spending money because you're spending every waking hour at work. So it's not like there was no winter sports back in those days. But I couldn't love it more. It was just so sort of beautiful to work for what we did and find some success, even though we could, not by a long shot think about first revenues, but we were getting that energy, right? We were building something that wasn't there, and everything that would result. I remember this one moment when I did go on like a summer holiday, just camping in France with my girl, and and I was sending out emails here and there, and I was getting emails in return, but no one really knew us just yet. So the moment we went on this holiday, I didn't send any emails, and I saw that there wasn't any emails coming back over that 2 weeks. So that made me feel like, okay, so from this moment on, everything that happens from this point on is because we initiated this. So where we are today, I probably get 500 emails per day these days, but everything that we've built, we built from that scratch, because that moment there was really nothing there, and building something from nothing is one of the most exciting things. But it does take character and will and hardcore belief in what you do.
Yeah, I believe so as well. You have to hold yourself tight to the dot that you put on the horizon, right? Like as far.
Yes, I mean, and that what separates a successful entrepreneur from someone that doesn't. But entrepreneurs tend to be those fools that persist where others, that sort of continue where others stopped, basically, because we're probably not the first ones that ever thought about this, but we're the first ones that pursued it to such extent that we were proper fools along the way, and we could have failed. And that's also what I accepted. We could have failed, but I would have never missed it, never wanted to miss it for anything in the world. I was convinced, because most startups don't make it. So I was pretty convinced that we wouldn't make it. But I knew that I would learn so much along the way. I would have a whole bunch of fun, and I would have earned my stripes in the sustainability industry. This is where I wanted to end up. So I accepted that we would probably fail. And that's, and then we just
what a great mindset.
Yeah,
what a great mindset, Olaf. And how did that first investment round then happen? How did you prepare yourself to that moment? Because I don't know, did you just went into it and see what will happen? Because, for instance, I think there's this famous story of where was it called? Is it, I think, Airbnb, that they had an investment for, like, there was this company in the US. They had their first investment, and they were not well prepared for going there, and they were thinking like, we will definitely not get this investment round. And then they went back and they got a call like, we invested in it, and they were like, what?
Yeah. Well, often case, that's also indeed the truth. In your investments, half of it is still bluff in that first round. But also investors No, that's no longer true, right? So I'm in a Series A phase now. So a lot of our plans are seriously more crystallized out. Yet still, some of that is bluff, but our investors are very well aware. Series B is really about figures. A Series A is about initial traction and scaling that up.
And then you
But
have
that's why
pre-seed where you didn't do.
Sorry?
And pre-seed phase, did you?
Well, they got the loan, no? They said.
Yeah, okay. They got the.
Alone. So those first people, they invest, and especially now, and even in the still in the Series A, they invest more in the founders than in the idea. That's what people tend to say, because the idea will basically almost guaranteed change from that day. But the sort of the passion and the will of the founders to get to success and impact in our case, because we were like targeting impact kind of funds and grants, and their belief that we are in pursuit of making a true impact that's with an economic return. That's what they invested in, and not in the exact idea, because the idea doesn't look exactly the same from what it was back then.
I am curious about how was the communication with restaurant owners. Like, what was the kind of we could call it
it's
pitch?
clients, you have to say.
Clients.
Yeah, it was the first sales talk. No?
Yeah, it's like I would like to know, like, what are the things of the message that do you believe that they connected more in order to say, yeah, let's do it. I will buy your service, or I will let you here.
Yeah, well, one of the first things I noticed is when I started talking about sustainability, they were inquiring about economics, and that's when I reshuffled my pitch and I started about economics, and that's when they started inquiring for sustainability. So that worked. They and I don't hold it against them. Any good business is a profitable business down the line. So restaurants, and especially especially restaurant and the hospitality industry at large, is running super tight margins. So they need to worry for those first, otherwise they don't have a restaurant and they won't be able to pay staff, and dream's over. So they do need to know if the economics work, and once you've convinced them of this, then they're happy to hear about the rest. So that's what we started talking to them about. We made them see that they were basically wasting the equivalent of their full profit margin, which is the case even today. So yeah, that's a pretty strong message to get out there.
I am just thinking that it's really true, like how sustainability seems that for many people that do not really care about sustainability in some way, I mean, they care in the most, let's say, human basic way.
Mm-hmm.
How is always like the added value. Like I think about a podcast that I listened recently, and they were like promoting a coffee, and they were explaining, oh, this coffee is really great, great taste, or something like that. And in the end, they said that something like, and it's sustainable. That is also something really important, no? Like, like being sustainable was never one of the main added values to sell it to their potential customers or to their audience. It was more like a good thing to have, no? Like, so for when I think about your sales pitch, it's like you can be saving this amount of money, and it's sustainable. So then they are like, okay, so it's also sustainable. No, it's not like, but first it has to give me money, for example. That is something interesting about the sustainability communication.
Yeah, but I think that when the word sustainable comes into place, people don't associate it with reducing costs, but with other barriers, like what is going to do if you talk about food, like what what is the taste? They have other perceptions that go into place. The feeling is different, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people when are worried that sustainability is going to cost them money or take a lot of time for whatever reason, and in often case it is the truth, and that's also what makes our solution so appealing, and that's why we're growing so fast, because we're one of those solutions that but that's also something that I basically thought about when I started this company. I wanted to have the person that has the economic benefit of this solution to be the same person that uses it every day and has to pay the bill, because that's not always true. Basically, almost every sustainability solution is cost positive for the world at large, for our climate and for all the costs down the line. But often case, sustainability is a cost for the person that needs to take the action. And that's what makes it so difficult, because they're indeed worried for their economic situation. And especially, in a low margin industry like hospitality, it's a big burden to sort of have to consider all of those sustainability efforts whilst they're trying to keep their business economically viable. And we're one of those solutions where they, as action takers, are also directly the economic benefactors of that solution, which makes it so strong. So we should do all of the sustainability things, everything from biodegradable straws to sustainable energy to food waste. But this is one that's easy to embrace because they can see the results themselves in their own wallets, and that's super helpful.
And then I would like to also understand the other side of the sales talk. Let's put it like that. No, what is actually what doesn't work? Where is when you see that there is clients that in the end do not decide to continue, but what do you think that they do not really get it?
There's where we're not working for smaller restaurants or smaller chains or sort of individual restaurants, unless they're super excited to work with us. But that's not our target audience, and the reason for it is we're working more with the big chains is because they're more data driven. Period. They have they run a super tight operations because it needs to be scalable. Think about Accor hotels, which is our biggest client. They're operating in 6,000 sites worldwide, so they need to have their shit in order to be able to reproduce the quality their guests expect from the brand that they see on the facade. Small restaurants have their own reputation to upkeep, don't get me wrong, but they do this out of more of a gut feel and a direct client passion that they have with being in direct touch with their guests all the time. So that's a big difference. We're not very good at helping those passion players, if you will. We want to, because that's where my dream started. I love that we get to help Accor, and that sort of the impact that we're having with them is like really at scale, because they've got very, very big restaurants. But everyone also loves their, corner restaurants, their papa mom place that they because they know you and whatever. And we do want to make sure that they can also join the fight and become more economically viable and more sustainable next to the big chains. But for now, the big change and the impact that we can make there is the road to also go to places where we do. But we need to honestly, that we know the data play. Now we also have to learn about the passion play, let's say.
I mean, that data that you already generated over the years can help these smallholder businesses as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait for us to start doing this. But if there's one lesson that any startup entrepreneur, and I'm not a perfect example of it, to be honest, but every startup entrepreneur should have is focus. And I told you at the start, I've got a limited attention span. So I'd like to pursue everything that comes my way, because I'm always super excited for everything, and I want to. I can't wait to start helping these restaurants, but we just don't have the capacity yet to also learn about that. So we need to do this play very well first, make sure that we become economically absolutely viable without investments and whatever in that field. And then we can start, in pursuit of the next big thing, which we will. But this focus is paramount if you want to be able to succeed. And that's the focus that we agreed. It's one of our core values, focus, just to keep me on a leash. But that's the focus that one needs to be able to make an impact.
The big slogan is Olaf needs to keep focus, always on the wall, I suppose, no?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I tell every single person that enters our company, there's a couple of the values that are like truly me from the core. That's my talent. and there's a couple that are, my pitfalls. And the values are not about me, but everyone will resonate with a couple of them and see the challenge in a couple other of them.
Yeah, and it's good that you know them, right? That's very good. Olaf, there's one thing within food waste that it is such a huge problem. It comes every time on the table when we talk about climate change and one things that we have to address.
Yeah.
But I also heard a lot of people saying that in this scope of food waste, solutions are not so easy to mitigate, right? Like you don't see that much of like business cases around it, because as what you see with, for instance, with in the consumer part, like the waste happens mostly in households, right? So
Yeah.
how how do you see the future of solutions in the scope of food waste? Like, where do you see opportunities laying?
Yeah, well, the business case is still for less income households. The business case is still reasonably pleasing, right? Or an average household still wastes a couple €100 annually, and that's not insignificant. But for the most part, you're right. The consumer won't be triggered much by the economic case in this case. The way that I see food waste in the consumer space, which is, to your point, is indeed the biggest one still, is just ease of use. Again, what we believe in, what I believe in, is like you need it so easy, make it so easy, and if you can, so much fun, that there's basically no reason not to do it. Actually, because your life will become a better place when you do use it. That's when you start, because the ease of use and sort of life comfort is a bigger driver for everyone, including you and me, than anything else. Bigger than economic, bigger than sustainability, bigger than so many other things. If I can make your life better, whilst and at the same time not more expensive, then I got you. Like, then I can make you do anything, basically, unless it's absolutely appalling. But yeah, that's what I think. What that looks like in consumer households is helping them to see, not sort of focus on the waste so much, focus on what they still have. When you're here in the studio, you can see what's in your fridge at home, such that on your way home on your bicycle, you can sort of drop by the supermarket, because you know what you still have, and you might see a couple recipes that you can still make with it, and this is what you still need. That will make your life easier. Something along those lines, I believe, will also address that problem, but not the economic case.
I used to think a lot about an idea. I remember that was like some way that when you go to the supermarket and you buy something, you could scan your ticket, and all of a sudden you will have like all the things that you bought already in your app, and the app could tell you when something was going to get spoiled, no, and then you could just. But I heard that Albert Heijn tried something similar. I remember that this was in
true.
and people reacted really negative to it. Like people didn't like that Albert was reminding them that things were going to spoil. And then in that moment, I was like, but then I don't know how needs this to be delivered to people in order to say, well, but do you prefer to throw it because you paid for it? Actually, like you're just like also losing money by throwing those tomatoes that you bought or something like that.
No, that's true. I mean, that's a pretty difficult situation that you're in, because people don't like to be meddled with, especially not by big companies. They don't want to sort of, unless again, it makes their life so much easier. But there's little sort of everything that a consumer uses needs to work perfect instantly, because they don't have any patience for it to be slightly suboptimal and still not be as comfortable as they like it to be. And then the attention span of a consumer is just so super short. The only the companies that succeed in doing so are the Googles of this world, because everything they throw out is instantly the most usable thing ever. And that makes that they're so successful at what they do. But and a lot of corporations suffer. They're trying something out. They sort of understand what they're doing, but then it's not as easy as it should be, and then they fail, or they get a bad review of this innovation that they did, and then they dispose of it. But the result was not that guests or clients or consumers didn't want it. They just it wasn't good enough yet. But you can only test it when it's super good. Yet you want to iterate quickly. It's very tough.
Looking to the future, what do you expect that Orbisk will be let's say, the next 5 years?
Yeah, and on top of that, Olaf, what were the biggest milestones so far?
That's a big question. The second one. First question first. World domination, of course. Yeah. So we want to. Today we've already saved over 2 million kilos of food, and we want to get to 2 billion in about 5 years. So that's the target. 1,000x impact from today, and yeah, world domination. I sort of truly we're already in 45 different countries, so we serve the whole world. But I want to be able by that time to indeed be able to be something as natural to be in a kitchen as an oven would be, or for it even doesn't really. Of course, I want to be the one to do that, but I don't even care if it's someone else. As long as food waste tracking and that is sorted in the whole industry at large. That's what I do believe. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that we're doing. We're actually now talking to the aviation industry to also do this in the air and stuff. So this will be everywhere. So that's what the future looks like. And the milestone question, it's very, very, very easy. Starting 2019, COVID 2020, damn, lasted 2 years. And then since growth, we started up with probably 15 or 20 devices early 2022. We're over 700 now. So yeah, since then it's just been growth and internationalization and dealing with everything that comes your way when you're growing so fast.
Yeah, and the latest investment round, like 8 million.
Yeah, 8.5. Yeah. So, and that means that we will be doubling the team again this year. We'll have a US chapter. We'll probably have an Asian chapter early next year. We're already in the Middle East. So, whole bunch of growth.
Wow.
A lot of brilliant people around us, but also
I see.
Big challenge to keep the culture. But that's also one of our core mission. Core targets that we set, goals that we set ourselves this year. Like keeping the culture is going to be paramount in this high growth situation.
Yeah, the hiring process. Yeah, that's another topic where we can dive into. But Olaf, we come to a closing. But before we end or do you have something?
Well, I would like to just ask us before entering to our closing questions, what would be a lesson or a piece of advice that he would give to any entrepreneur that is starting something in the food industry or agri industry, or maybe even more targeted to the food waste?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't limit it to that. There's one of them is focus that I mentioned, but the most important lesson that I had at the start is listen to everyone. Everyone will come to you with advice, and everyone's advice pretty much is well intended. That doesn't mean they're all right. So listen to everyone. Gather all of the information that you can. Dare to speak about your solution. I was keeping my cards closed at the start because I was afraid someone else would steal it. But no one's going to steal your idea. You're already too invested. But listen to everyone. Listen, gather all that information and make your own truth out of that. Because people will be wrong, and then that's what you also know, or you believe them to be wrong. But every piece of information is well intended, is a gift, and use all of it to make your own reality. And don't be too convicted about your own point of view just yet in the start.
Cool.
Yeah, then for sure we can move to our closing questions. Great thanks now for all the nice insights. But when we come to our closing questions, the first one is, since we've been doing so many questions to you, Olaf, we always think that it's just fair to give the guest the chance to ask us a question to us.
Nice. What does tomorrow's bites look like in 5 years?
Wow, there's definitely a good question. But
yeah,
I think that for us, the most important thing is to make sure that people get into the more global systemic thinking about the food industry, that everybody sees their solutions as the solutions to everything. Don't feel in this case to take yourself as I mentioned you, but in general, like, people tend to think that their solution is a big part of the change. And as we see it, there is something with the solutions, is that every solution comes with trade-offs, and we need to think globally to understand, like, okay, since there is going to be a trade-off on revolutionizing, on changing the food industry from all sides, what is the things that we want to do? So we expect that in the end we are able to keep going with this mission and with these values to the point where we can maybe create videos, workshops, things that people can learn from, because that's always something that we will really care for, the education and inspiration, and make sure that we can keep let's say pushing for accelerating the people that really wants to make an impact and in the end make the world better through food.
Yeah, I always say that this is a podcast where food is not necessarily a problem, but rather a solution. I mean, this conversation is an example again. Lots of lessons here shared around business and everything around it, like entrepreneurship. And that is something we will just keep on going and doing, like giving the stage to the ones that are driving for a better future and going to different perspectives around problems that we see and solutions in that, let's say, category or scope that we believe.
Yeah, I think if I had to say something that I wish that we could do more in 5 years, is like actually keep being able to go to places to show like the real deal
Show the real deal as well.
to the audience, because that is where you can actually get more knowledge, like actually see, like get more inspired to see how every successful entrepreneur has a story, like origin story, you know, like if they were like superheroes, and in that origin story they are just as you are, like they were in the same position as you, everybody with their own conditions and whatever, with their own hand, and that means that everybody from that original stage can reach the successful entrepreneur with an impact. That is in the end what we also really look for.
Nice. Thanks for sharing.
And well, the last question that we like to do always, Olaf, is one to, well, in the end, this is a green food podcast, a food podcast in its core. So we always end up asking, what is your favorite food and dish?
I was still thinking about that because I'm not sure what I'm going to cook tonight, but I would say generally Italian. My brother lives in Italy, and I want to live there one day too. I just like the Italian cuisine and their love for what they do. If there's ever anyone that is both as loving and as, you know, conservative about their food, it's the Italians, but for the right reasons, I suppose.
And if you were now in an Italian restaurant, what is the thing that you really wished that is in the menu so you could order it?
Oh man, I think I would. I think by asking that question, I have to insult someone in some region by definition. But I had food in Puglia, down in the south. With my brother's married to an Italian lady, and her mother is probably the best cook that I've ever had food from, and she turned out so many different in one course, so many different types of white cheese that I've never even heard of them, like mozzarella, stracchino, stracciatella. There was like probably 8 different types of white cheese, one more brilliant than the other, and they were all, we would say here in the Netherlands, blunt as we are, that they're mozzarella-like cheeses, but they were so phenomenal. I was really, really impressed about that.
I mean, you were in that area, Olaf. Like the heel is known for that part, right? For the cheeses. Ricotta, burrata. Yeah. Nice.
I would choose that now. I'm really craving for some of that action.
Very great, Olaf. I think this was a wonderful conversation.
Likewise.
Thanks a lot for what you have done, said here. Explained the story around Orbisk. As you said, you're a storyteller. You had a good hour focus on this conversation. So thanks for that, Olaf. And I hope, there are so many things here shared around the stages of how you've been through with the business, with valuable lessons in it. So thanks for that.
Thank you guys for having me.
We wish you the best with Orbisk.
Yeah, yep. You too with tomorrow's bites.